Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. This is my second attempt at doing this video today. First attempt was an hour and 3 minutes long, and when I went to render it and put it in the video editor and that, it turns out there was no sound. I thought I'd left mute on, but it turns out my normal microphone is broken, so I'm using the microphone on my camera. If I sound different, funny, bit echoey, I apologize about that. Anyway, I'm going to talk about today the annual report that came out on Friday, that was published on Friday on County Borough Council's website. I'm also going to talk about the story that doesn't seem to be going away at the moment, the free school travel issue, more that came out last week. I'm also going to talk about Newbridge Fields and the use of facilities there over the weekend. And I'll also talk a little bit about something that happened on Facebook last week from a reply I did to a post. I may also talk about a little bit about something that's happening in Wales and the Welsh Government reporting on BBC yesterday. The Welsh Government may be looking to expand the vaccine passports, which I said would probably happen, and may talk a little bit of that. And also another report I saw yesterday on planning, because that is something that I talk a lot about, and it's something that's happening in England at the moment. Planning matters are devolved to Wales, so whether something like that would happen here, we'll speak later. Anyway, we'll get on to the first part, which is the annual report that came out on the County Borough website on Friday, and a few issues that I have noticed with it. I'm going to share a screen. I won't talk about everything on this first initial screen. If you want to read it, or pause the videos at some point and think, or just read through it, or just go to the County Borough Council website and take a look. So let's bring up the first screen here. The first screen is Council publishes annual report. It tells us the objectives, some of the objectives they couldn't do because of COVID, which was understandable. Some of them didn't quite meet their targets, which was understandable again because of COVID. But there were some where they smashed their targets, like nearly doubling, helping people into work. 401 people, their target was 200, and they more than doubled that. The recycling rates, even though we had a pandemic hit last year and there were issues with picking up recycling, it turns out the council actually increased the recycling amount that is recycled from 67.66 to 69.51%, which is a great reflection on the council here, and of course the residents of Bridgend County that are putting more and more into the recycling and less into landfill waste. So well done to everybody involved there. Also got maybe 2.5 million more from disposal of surplus land and buildings, nearly 2.5 million more than their target of 600,000, which is fantastic news. Then a short statement by Councillor Hugh David about the unique challenges of last year and the hard work that all council employees did last year, and I think we should thank them for all the hard work, not just the day-to-day council employees, the ones that are on the ground, or the executives, but the councillors themselves. I think they all deserve credit for what's happened, for everything that they did last year. They didn't get everything right, nobody does, but they did a lot of good. I think I will be having a drink a lot. My throat is just a little bit sore today. So, okay, so I read through majority of the report. It's 62 pages. There's a lot of good stuff in there that the council have done. There's some things I don't quite understand. It's not written from the point of ordinary people having to understand it, which makes no sense to me because it's a report that is published and people are told they can view it at any point. And I think everybody should. If you can't get to sleep, read the report. It is very dry. It will send you to sleep. So have fun that way. But it's very vague in how it sets things out. Not everything is easily understandable. I don't understand all of it. I hope somebody can talk with me to clarify and make sense of the things where I'm not 100% clear on. There's some things that I'm not even 50% clear on. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, I'm going to share a screen now. This is going on to a part that will show the vagueness and the not understanding properly. So we'll each have a look and we'll take our time over this. I will read through it and explain as I'm going along what I'm thinking. So this is the financial performance, and it reads as follows. Our financial environment is becoming increasingly challenging. We need to make unprecedented savings in the future that can only be achieved by changing the way we work and changing the way services are delivered. This is something they've said for at least the last 5 years, or possibly even 11 years now, going back from the start of austerity, which the council lost £17 million of their budget over the last 11 years. When you look in this context, £70 million over 11 years doesn't seem that a lot when we talk about the figures that are coming up. But it is a lot of money, and they have made a lot of sacrifice. You can't blame everything on the Conservative governments. Yes, they had introduced austerity, and there was a big case for they had to introduce it because of what's happened in previous years and the financial crisis in 2008. But that's here nor there. That's not what we're discussing. Anyway, go back to this. Last year, the gross amount we spent on delivering services to our citizens and investing in our landscape and infrastructure totaled around £470.91 million. That's nearly £500 million. That's a lot of money. £500 million. This is where it starts getting confusing to me. It says the total amount that we had available to spend was made up from three main sources listed below. Now, to me, that line states that the 470.91 million is made up, total amount they had available to spend was made up from the three following areas. But this is where I get confused, because the next paragraph, as you can see below, says revenue expenditure. That's not an income, and that line indicates the 470 was made up from this income, but this is expenditure, so you don't get this goes out. Anyway, get back to it. Our revenue expenditure represents day-to-day costs, such as salaries, equipment, supplies, and services. Our net revenue expenditure in 2021, after allowing for accrued council tax income and appropriation to earmarked reserves, was 286.43 million. The table below shows the expenditure and proportion of the spend per well-being objective in 2021, and spend on other core services, statutory functions. Okay, so they made 286.453 million after council tax and income appropriation to earmark reserves. Right, so they had 286.543 million to spend. So that might go into that, but it's not clear because this says expenditure and it's talked previously about revenue. Well-being objective for 2021, and then you've got the four categories: support and successful economy, helping people be more self-reliant whilst use resources, core services as statutory functions. Now, it's part of the core services, I'm guessing, is social care, council tax benefit, housing benefit, schools, things of that nature, highways, things of that nature. So that was 170 million they spent on that. 173 they spent in the end. They spent 2.1 million over what they had budgeted for. But then first of all, we've got support a successful economy. Now, it doesn't explain what that actually means. Is that help with business rates, helping to get small businesses going, reliefs on those rates, the market, like in the market where they've had a moratorium on reducing the rates for a while through the pandemic? Is that what that means? It doesn't explain, so you can't be sure what that is for. And that's what I'm saying about the vagueness. It's there, but it may as well say, we have this money, we spent it. Because that's basically what that's saying. Then you've got helping people to be more self-reliant. What's that? Is that part of social care? Is that teaching in school people to children how to be in relationships, to look after themselves, to get jobs and things like that? I don't know. So that was 58 million. Again, it's not very clear what that's for. You can have a brief explanation of what that actually means and what that actually went into. And it's the same with the second one, smarter use of resources. And they spent 4.781 million. What's that? Did they get a better computer system? Did they have better telephone system, better working from home conditions? Because I know that happened during the pandemic, that people had to work from home. So it's that smarter use of resources. Don't know. Again, there's not that total explanation. And then you've got the core services and statutory functions, which I explained earlier what I thought they would be. So they actually underspent £500,000 there from that 286.8 million budget. So they saved £500,000. Great. But we move on to the next one, which again is not revenue. So it's not making up that 400, what's coming to make up that 470 million. This is what's coming out of that 470 million. So the budgets aren't made up through these. These are made up because of the budget. It's confusing. It doesn't sit right. But these are capital expenditures. Is what they spend out on. As you can see, Maesteg Town Hall Cultural Hub. They're redoing the Maesteg, which is 1.7 million. They spent 1.7 million there. But there's various other things on there that they've done, which is great, fantastic. It's great to see active travel and disabled facilities grants and school capital maintenance grants and things like that. It's brilliant to see that. I'm glad the council are investing in those things and helping it become more of a community. So well done on council. This is where we actually get into where some money has come from, but it's 124 million, so we're still missing over 300 million where that's come from. Council tax, yes, from the central government in the Senate, yes, but it doesn't say how much in those parts, how much has come in. And we'll get to more from that in a minute. Also, we received specific revenue grants in addition to the core revenue support grant from the best rate. So these are grants they got, like Department for Work and Pensions grant income. I'm guessing that's towards housing benefits and things like that. Education improvement grants, that's towards schools, adult learning facilities, I'm guessing, same pupil development grants. And Flying Start grants is for people starting out of family when they've just had their first child, I believe that is. I may be wrong, and somebody correct me if I am, please do. But we can see all that came in from outside sources, not directly from the Welsh Government. but outside sources, totaling 124.77 million, which is a very decent amount, and well done on the council for getting all that money in to help alleviate the budgets of it. This is where we start getting confusing. This is the summary where the money is spent. So I assume this is a summary of where all that 470 million is spent and where it comes from. So we've got 2020, 2021, where the money comes from. So we've got the revenue support grants and non-domestic rates from Welsh Government, 45%. So that's the budgets they get from the Senate every year, their portion of the money the Senate gets. Then you've got specific government grants, 28%, which I'm guessing is what we've just seen in the table before. Other grants and contributions, part of what was come before, I'm guessing. Then council tax, which is 19%, which works out to roughly about 72 million, something like that. That's how much it comes, they generate in council tax. And Bridgend are actually very good at collecting nearly all the council tax that they are due to receive every year. So they've been praised for that, and it's good to see that they're getting nearly all the council tax that they are due. And then you've got fees and charge from other income. So I'm guessing that's car parks and sports facilities and things like that that they use throughout the county. So that's where the money's all come from. It's all in percentages. It's no specific amount. So it's not really helpful. You just split do the percentages from the 470 million, but it's not very specific. So it's very vague. It could be done much simpler, much easier to understand and read. Here's where we get to where the money is spent. So I assume it's that 470 million. And so we've got education, family, sports, schools, or adult social care, prevention, wellbeing, safeguarding, communities, benefit payments, capital financing, levies, corporate function, council tax, and council tax deductions. So this splits up everything that is 470 million, where it goes and what it goes on, which is good. But again, the eagle-eyed of you will notice that I missed out one bit, and it says chief executives, 7%. Now, when I was calculating that, I was calculating originally from the 288 billion. That was my miscalculation, and I thought, well, that's roughly about 21 million pounds. I thought that's a lot of money, but then I remembered it was 400. This is based, should be based from 470 million, which works out to just over 40 million spent on chief executives. Says chief executive 77%. How much of that? What is that for? It's just a nondescript chief executive. Does it mean the whole payroll, including pay as you earn, pensions, and everything like that? Because there's nothing there that indicates payment to people and payroll and things like that. Or is this just on what the chief executives paid? If that's the case, that is an extortionate amount of money. But there's no explanation of what it's for and what it's going. So as you can see, as I'm saying, the vagueness, the incomplete story, people are entitled to know what the money is spent on. Okay, you're not entitled to know each person's individual wage with the council, but you're entitled to know how much the council spends out on wages and spends out on groups of wages, I suppose, like the chief execs or the middle management or the lower, the frontline services. But there we go. It's no explanation. There's no key. You've got that little key up, but it actually means nothing. You've got the schools. Yes, you understand what schools are. The cost of the teachers, the cost of keeping the schools open. Maybe even I'm doubting the building of schools, so it's probably something else. But it doesn't go on any further to say, it just goes on to audit Wales. So as you can see, it's very vague, and it happens quite a lot through the report. Now, I don't understand it all. I don't understand that. Maybe somebody can explain what each individual bit is. But that chief exec one really concerns me. It just says 7% chief executive. Now, what does that mean? What has that money gone on? That's £40 million. That's 7% of the budget. So think about 7%. Yeah, no, just less than £40 million. Sorry, just less than £40 million, but it's in the 30s, and it's still quite a lot. So you're talking just over 30 odd £1 million, which is quite a lot. But so it'd be better if this was put in a simpler way, like this is what we spent the money on, X, Y, Z, so we can see, rather than chief execs or better working conditions or something like that. So you can get down to the roots of it. Yes, there probably are financial reports somewhere where you can get to the root of things, but they're very hard to find different things. I haven't been able to find them as yet. Any report is very vague on what the figures actually are, or where the money's actually going, or what they're spending the money on. So it's very vague and very obtuse. Anyway, I'm going to move on to a second part of the report now, and it's to do with. I'll just bring it up on the screen here. It's to do with Bridgend Indoor Market. Now, the council goes in this and say it's all part of the improving town centres, and they talk about Bridgend Indoor Market, improving work for the Bridgend Indoor Market are now improvement work for Bridgend Indoor Market are now complete. The public toilets, including accessible and baby changing facilities, multi-use central area is available, special event, family entertainment, children play facilities, and other activities designed to encourage football. And they also say about offering commissionary rates to market traders and promoting a local shop message. Great, brilliant. This is what we want to see. Trying to attract more people into the market, into town centres, so we can regenerate our town centres. The issue I have is, if you read this, and you'd think Bridgend County Borough Council, and I'm only talking about public toilets here, put the public toilets in place, regenerate, paid for it all, and running it. That's not the case. Yes, they gave them the shop, what was the shop space, for free. Yes, they're paying for future part, they're paying partial part of the future cleaning costs. Understand, that's great, well done. But the toilets were actually, the money for it was raised by the market traders themselves and Bridgend Town Council, which funded a large part of the refurbishment for the new toilets and changing facilities. But nowhere in that does that say. It's I'll read a message I got earlier, because I wanted to be sure on what I've done. This is from a Bridgend Town councillor. It was a Bridgend Town Council initiative through our regen committee in partnership initially with Darren Ham. So well done, Darren Ham, doing this as well, which then became the consulted market, constituted market traders group. So that's all the market traders there joining, or majority of them, or whatever, help raise the money in conjunction with Bridgend Town Council to get this done. Bridgend County Borough Council could have said, working in partnership with local town council and market traders, we've introduced the public, their own public toilets with them. Here in this, it makes it out as if this was some Bridgend County Borough Council did, when it wasn't. It wasn't even initially driven by Bridgend County Borough Council, driven by Darren Ham and Bridgend Town Council. So I think credit should go where credit is due. And yes, Bridgend County Borough Council done a good part in this. They've given the vacant shop part for free, and they're helping with partial ongoing cleaning costs in the future. Which, great, they should be commended on that, but they shouldn't be taking all the credit for what is done, which will lead me on to something later, and I'll explain later. Anyway, I'm going to get off that now because it's a long report. I recommend you go see it. It's on the council website. It's the first item on the news page at the moment, so go see it. Excuse me, getting over not being well. But next, I'm going to go on to the story that at the moment doesn't seem to want to go away, and that's the free travel to school. It's reported by some parents last week that their children were denied using the free bus to school because they forgot the bus pass. Now, this is something that children do. I do it as an adult. I forgot my wallet when I went to the shop the other day. I had to turn around and come back. I was lucky I could do that. But not everybody. A child heads in the clouds, especially early in the morning, don't think about these things, and bus pass just gets left behind. Now, let's look at it as a safeguarding issue. Bus driver sees a kid every day, but kids forgot the bus pass. Now, the operators have been told they can't allow children on, or they lose the contract. So I'm led to believe this is what's going on Facebook. Whether we believe that or not, I don't know whether it's true. But bus drivers obviously have been told, we don't want to lose our contract, so you've got to refuse them. There's no choice. So even if they see this child every day, they know that that child forgets a bus pass, they can't let them on. And this seems to be what's being reported at the moment, what's happening by parents across the county. My issue is it becomes a safeguarding issue. What if that child doesn't have a key to get back into their house? They've already missed a bus. They're not going to be able to get another bus with a school bus with a bus pass. They'd have to get a ticket for Bridgend bus. Whether they accept bus pass or not, I don't know. But it becomes very awkward. The child parents could have gone to work. That child could be locked out of the house, can't even get his bus pass or her bus pass. May not really know the neighbours, or the neighbours may be out work. Now, this child is alone, wandering around, unless the child wants to make a walk all the way to school. Just thinking, if that child lives up the top of the Garrow Valley and has to walk all the way down to where they're in, that is a long walk. It's going to take at least 2 hours, I would have thought, to walk that far, a child. And it's dangerous. So there's a safeguarding issue for children there, which seems to be cropping up all over the county, with children having to walk to school as well, where there's not safe crossings, but it's considered a safe route. If you haven't got a pedestrian crossing across a busy main road like Litchard, like on Litchard Cross, it's not safe. Ambulances rush down there, buses go down there, cars go down there. It's a busy main road. It's the main bus thoroughfare throughout the county. So this policy that's come into place seemingly this year. Now, Bridgend County Borough Council said they're meeting Welsh Government guidelines, which is true. Yeah, fair enough. But this is the first year in 4 or 5 years that they haven't gone above and beyond those guidelines. And it's funny that this year a report was due out in April before the Senate elections, but that has been delayed indefinitely and probably won't be coming out during this parliament. Or if they do, they might say, oh, it's going to come out April 2026, which is going to be a couple of months before the next parliament, which will, again, they'll delay because they've got an election coming up, so it might delay another 5 years. So we're on to 2031. Why this year, after the delayed proposal, have Bridgend County Borough Council decided to do this? Councillor Charles Smith came out with a statement saying that we're just following Welsh government guidelines, which, fine, fair enough. Yes, you're doing that. But previous to that, you went above and beyond those guidelines. So what this year, why this year, when a report's been delayed, is different? When a report by your own government has been delayed, that they stated they didn't want to bring it out in April because you had Welsh elections in a couple of months. Fine, fair enough. That insinuates that report is ready. Release that report now. Let us see what the recommendations are. Why is it going to take so long? Is it because those recommendations are above what they are now? 3 miles for secondary school, 2 miles for primary. Are they to come down 1 mile for primary and 2 miles for secondary? Is that the problem and going to cause problems and mean the Welsh Government has to find extra funding? The report should be ready. It was delayed because you have elections coming up. So that report should be ready. If not, it should be ready very, very soon and not have to wait 5 years. So I urge any councillors, any Senate members or MPs who are watching, kind enough to watch this video, please put pressure on to get this report out. Why isn't this report out? Why is it going to be delayed indefinitely? Children's lives are at risk. It's never right to react. You've got to be proactive, not reactive. Why are we putting our children's lives in danger? Yes, it may save money. Yes, you may need to save money, but you've got large reserves at the moment. Yes, I know I've been told that they're allocated things, but what projects? What projects can't you scrimp a little bit off each project just to cover this? Scrimp a little bit of each project, find private funding for each project to do that. What are these projects? We don't know. And there's currently over 90 million in the BCBC reserves. Over 90 million, just imagine that. That's nearly a quarter, that's just under a quarter of the budget. Quite a few million under actually, but just under a quarter of the budget, of the yearly budget. So that's a hell of a lot of money to be holding. Yes, you may have projects that you want to do and things like that. Are they all going to be done within the next 2 years? I doubt it. I very much doubt it because there's nothing that I've seen that is going to come close to 90 odd million in the various projects that have been announced that they're wanting to do. So what is this money for? I've been told to speak to an officer about it, but your councillors, that's what you're here for. You're here to explain that. Anyway, so that's my little thing on the story that doesn't seem to be going away. But we're moving on to a story now of another safeguarding issue and a horrible issue for children yesterday at Newbridge Fields. Sports team couldn't get into the facilities and had to change it in a container, in one of those metal containers, I think it was, to do the sports. Now, these clubs pay money every year to the council for use of these sports facilities and changing rooms and pitches, and yet nobody was there to open up the thing. It's not acceptable. It's not the first time. Apparently, it's been other times, and it's happened to other clubs as well. And some of these clubs pay £1,000 or upwards a year for the use of these facilities, and yet they can't get in. There've been complaints made to WRU about teams having improper facilities to shower and change after rugby matches, and they don't want to stay behind for the hospitality and the bonding afterwards, which is part and parcel of the rugby. Go for a pint afterwards, the adults, not the kids. It's all part and parcel. They just want to go back and get go home and have a shower, which is perfectly understandable. I won't want to sit around in a rugby club and covered in mud, and especially now this time of year with the rain and the horrible conditions we've got. People are going to be more muddy. So they don't want to sit in clubs like that. And clubs don't want to sit in there like that because it gets the place dirty, increase their costs for cleaning, maybe even outside professional cleaning for cleaning upholstery on furniture because people are grounded mud in them. So with the sword of Damocles hanging over these sports clubs' head with the one day possible rise of 500% pitch fees, which has been dangling for 2-3 years now, but keeps getting delayed twice now due to the pandemic. It could come in at any point. I don't think it's going to come in before the next election. I really don't. But that clubs are living with that all the time. When is that going to come in? I think they're going to be safe for another year. I don't think it's going to come in now before the next election. It wouldn't be great for the council at the next election. So that'll be indefinitely delayed as it is at the moment. But I wouldn't surprise me after the next election if that came in. A lot of clubs will disappear, which will mean a lot of sports, a lot of people won't be able to join sports teams because there's only so much room at each sports team for the amount of people, which goes against the well-being policy of the council to get more people active and into sports and into fitness and looking after themselves. So that was another safeguarding issue that came up yesterday. Next, I'm going to talk a little about something that I suppose I caused a bit of a storm on Facebook, replying on a post that was put out by Welsh Labour last week. Crux of it, the Bridgend County Independents did a post about talking about roundabouts and things, and the crux of it was if you want a council to deliver things like doubling the council tax on empty homes and things like that, you need the Labour Council, not BCI, who's just going to talk about roundabouts. Doesn't matter what anybody was talking about, but I commented various things, but I also commented at the bottom about that empty homes policy which was put in there. Now, back in 2017, I know a big issue and a big pusher of this empty homes policy was Councillor Sorrel Dendy from Blangarry. She worked hard on getting a policy thing. She asked questions and she didn't always get the answers that she wanted. And so I commented that it was councillors like Sorrel Dendy and others. I'm not sure. I think Alex Williams was part of it. I'm not sure. But there are other people from various other parties involved. Give them all credit, fair enough, but it was Labour taking credit. So I said this, and I had a response from the Councillor Stuart Baldwin, cabinet member, and his response was basically, we're the party in power, so it was us who delivered it. And I responded with, okay, then does that mean anything that Labour put forward in the House of Parliament because the Tories are the ones in the majority are the ones, so if it gets delivered, they're the ones who delivered it, not Labour Party. And I was saying that BCI had this part of the manifesto, and he was saying, oh, because it was posted on Facebook, it's not actually a manifesto, which Labour do, Tories do, Lib Dems do, everybody does use Facebook and social media to post their manifesto. So by that logic, nobody has a manifesto. Not everybody can afford to print up paper all the time with all the things they want to do. we don't have funding from outside donors like unions and things like that. And especially independents and even smaller parties don't have that sort of funding. So Facebook, it should be classed as a legitimate place where they did it. So I said, well, it was in the BCI manifesto, and there was a post about it on the 8th of March as well. Oh, well, I didn't see it, so therefore it didn't exist, was the basic reply. So my reply was, well, I didn't see it in the Labour manifesto, and I haven't seen anything you said about it, so it doesn't exist. And apparently my logic is flawed there. So, but that isn't the thing. I made a post, and then it was one by one by one by one. Labour supporters all started to comment at me and to me and asked me about various things, about why they weren't getting answers from somebody else. Well, nothing to do with me. Go ask that person, go speak to that person. If you don't want to speak to them, if you want to get answers from them, unblock them from Facebook so you can speak to them. It's not my job. If I'm interviewing that counsellor, then fair enough, send your question in and I'll ask that counsellor for an answer. If they don't want to answer, I'll push a bit, but I can't compel them to give answers. But I will say here, I didn't feel bullied, I didn't feel attacked, bit outnumbered at times. But if I'm a counsellor, I do this on Facebook, I do the videos, I talk to people, so I'm used to people commenting and commenting and commenting. But if I look at this as an ordinary person, just making the comment, the simple comment to what I did, and I've seen it, and don't say you haven't, that they've not done it. Labour have done it, BCI have done it, Conservatives have done it, every member's done it, and it's always seems to be the same members continually, a certain group of members. I'm not saying they're nasty, I'm not saying they're horrible or anything like that, but you overwhelm one person who speaks to what they're dissatisfied to, and all of a sudden, as I said, said to somebody, it's like a flock of pigeons just descend on you because you got seed, bird seed, and it's Trafalgar Square, and a flock of pigeons descend on you, and it's everywhere. An ordinary person can feel overwhelmed by that, and don't say it doesn't happen because I've seen it, and I've not just seen it from Labour, I've seen it from others as well, other groups, BCI, Conservatives, and things like that. I've seen it from everybody, but it's a very intimidating tactic. I wasn't intimidated. I could deal with it, I think, but ordinary people who are just commenting because they see something wrong. They may not be a supporter of any party. They may not be a supporter of an independent. They just might be an ordinary person looking at things, and then you get person after person after person after person commenting at you, not on the post directly, not just at the post, but tagging you in this. My message just kept going ding, 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 like this. I replied to a lot of them. I replied to most of them actually, and I had a lot of fun debating with people. But people were asking me, well, can you ask this council why they haven't answered it? Well, no, you ask them yourself. And I spoke about how I'm happy that a lot of councillors are willing to speak to me, even ones that I'm part of a group, PCI, you all know that, I've said before, have been criticised in the past. Tom Gifford, as a classic example. I used the example of spoken there that I got a resident's question asking why he voted against £20 He was happy to answer it. He gave his reasoning, very fair, sound reasoning, whether you agree with it or not. It was very sound, fair, and well laid out, against the free school meals, and we spoke about that as well. And I respect somebody who'll sit down and talk to me and explain, show me from their point of view. I may not agree with that point of view in the end, but I can see where they're going and see what they're thinking, rather than saying, "Oh, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a councillor from an opposition group. How ridiculous, how petty. Councillor Baldwin, I asked him on that thread for an interview. I said, come on, explain, come change my mind. I'm happy to listen. And if you convince me that I'm wrong, I'm happy to admit I'm wrong. I'll always admit I'm wrong if I'm wrong. But he didn't want to. He refused. I'm not going to talk to you. And comment there. If I was a Labour councillor, I wouldn't talk to you either. Well, lucky you're not a Labour councillor, so bye. I'm happy about that. I don't. It's hard to bring a balanced view to the county when there's one particular group that won't talk to you, and unfortunately, they happen to be the controlling group of the council. They won't talk to you, and they think if you go against what they think or the policies they put in place, it's negative politics, which is what I was told by another prominent Labour councillor who I asked for an interview. BCI are negative because they go against the policies of the council and have nothing themselves. Well, they do have alternative suggestions and things. Okay, they're not fully costed out because we don't have the minutiae of every little cost detail, how much you got, how much things cost. That's a lot of money. We don't get paid that sort of money. And not all the councillors in BC do their own work anyway. There's a lot of staff that do all that research and all that thing for them. There's only so much you can do, even as an opposition in Westminster. There's only so much you can cost. There's only so much you can do. You have a better understanding because you've been in there a long time and you know how things work better, and you have a better understanding of things. So it'd be easier. So I need to think. So it's negative politics if you go against what the leading party are doing. So just so you know, everybody, Labour are into negative politics because they disagree with what Tories are doing in government, according to their own logic there. Apparently, I've got the flawed logic. I just don't see that. Anyway, so I've spoken a bit about that. I actually enjoyed the debating with people and talking to them and things like that. But I could see from an ordinary person's point of view how that could be very intimidating, the way everybody just descends and messages, links you into that message, ping, and it was just one ping after another. And oh my God, what have I done? What am I doing? Me personally, I was having fun. I was enjoying it. It's nice to debate people. I like to debate people who I disagree with because quite often you find middle ground somewhere. Didn't with that thread at all with anybody, I don't think. I think I held my own well. But I really enjoyed it, but I can see how people get intimidated by it, and it is wrong. People should be free to criticize, but not get ordinary people should be free to criticize, but not get inundated with supporters from the group they're criticizing. Just pound away at them, and a lot of the logic and things was nonsensical. A lot of the things said there were nonsensical. I had somebody asking me, well, what's Steve Bledsoe and Mike Williams saying in their interview about toxic politics? Go view the videos. I've come down to bite-sized chunks so you can actually not spend 1 hour or 2 hours watching it. And I got asked the question 3 times. First time I didn't reply. Second time I did. And then the person asked the question again. And I said, just go watch the videos. I'm not here to think. Do you ask Andrew Neil what was said in his interviews? Or would he tell you to go watch them? Not that I'm Andrew Neil or anything, but they're there to watch. They're free to watch. Go watch them. It doesn't. I'm not hiding them. The full interviews are unedited. The clips are edited down into sections, so there may be little bits missed out, but the majority of it is there. Anyway, so I'm going off that. I'm going to go on to a couple of little things now, very quickly, because it's running on. First of all, there was an article on the BBC yesterday about Wales considering tightening the vaccine passports. Now, I did a short video on this a few weeks ago, I think it was, where I wrote a post about it. That when is enough enough? This is, if you look, people don't want to say, yes, we've got public safety, but vaccine passports are really good. And I said I advise everybody to get the vaccine, but it should be a personal choice, and then you shouldn't be discluded from society for having a personal choice. But see, now vaccine passports, how far? When will it stop? I know in some parts of Canada at the moment they've got vaccine passports, and if you haven't got vaccine passports, you're not even allowed to work in places. You're not even allowed to go into a shop, into certain shops. This is becoming a bit like Germany in the 1930s and 1940s. I know if people say you go to those arguments, you lose the argument straight away. But it is the last time we saw papers and things like this started to come into the thing. We ended up with a dictatorial society that started a world war. I'm not saying this is what happened here, and yes, these are different times and different circumstances, but your basic freedoms and your basic liberties should still exist. You shouldn't be excluded from places because you've decided, for whatever reason, whether it's religious reasons, medical reasons, or personal belief, personal system, not to get a vaccine. The fact is that the vaccine doesn't prevent transmission of COVID. You can still catch COVID if you've been vaccinated, and you can still pass it on. It's just gonna not supposedly it's not going to be as bad for you if you've been vaccinated. You're not going to be so as ill, even though a couple of weeks ago the report came out saying 1/3 of new COVID patients are unvaccinated, which meant 2/3 of new COVID patients were vaccinated. So you can still transmit the disease if you're vaccinated. It makes no difference. So how having vaccine passports, whether somebody's vaccinated or not, is going to have any difference. I could be completely wrong on this, but from what I've read from many different sources, I don't just stick to one source or one leaning source, whether it's right wing, left wing, centrist, or whatever. I read lots of different sources. And from what I can tell, you can still transmit COVID even if you've been vaccinated. So the vaccine passports actually make no sense in that regard, because whether you're vaccinated or not, you still can pass on the illness. Which the only thing a vaccine passport would do is say who's going to possibly be worse affected, somebody with or somebody without. That's all it's going to do. And we don't have to prove our vaccination status for mumps, measles, or rubella. In certain circumstances in school, public bodies, yes, you do. But a private company can't ask you for that information. It's private medical records. They have no rights to it. You have a right to have your medical history private. And measles and mumps and rubella much more deadly than COVID. And I'm not dismissing the deadliness of COVID. It's a horrible disease and people are dying from it. Yes, I understand that. But where does our personal liberties, how far do our personal liberties, personal responsibilities get mangled, and will we ever get them back? And if we do, in what form, and how many, and what other exemptions can our personal liberties be taken away from us? Anyway, I'll get off that now and move on to something that's happening in England and the possibility of a bill being brought forward for a change in planning conditions. Now, this bill or motion that's been considered and thought about in that is to give communities a larger say over large housing development projects in their area, taking some of it away from council. I stress at this point, this is only effectively would only affect England because planning issues have devolved to Wales, whether Wales will change. I do believe there needs to be a fundamental change in planning laws in Wales, because at the moment, objecting to a planning condition is pointless. You've got no say, no weight, it carries no weight whatsoever. It really doesn't, no matter what you say, no matter what your argument is. Case in point, the Wellness Centre in Sunnyside. Park Street in Bridgend has one of the highest rates of gases from cut up from vehicles in the county. Whether it's got a public order on it now or will do in the future is possible, but yet you build a wellness centre which will have more visitors, will increase traffic around that area, which will increase pollution, which is what you're trying not to do. And that was an argument made before the council, before the wellness centre was approved for development, and yet it was ignored. So, as I say, objecting to planning laws at the moment is pointless. You get no way, nothing happens. So it'd be good that communities have more of a say in the larger housing developments that are going on in their area. So some of the proposed to take some of it away from the council, so that communities can agree their own Section 106 and what they want in place at what time before something is built, which is a fantastic idea because councils can't have these timelines that they want this and this built, and all they do is keep warning. They don't follow through on action. And I think community groups would follow through on action more because they're more up in arms about things. So I hope there is a change to planning laws in Wales very soon. Something would be better that give people more say. I don't agree with this, not in my backyard, but I do agree with certain restrictions when buildings come in place, or they should be doing certain things first, or meeting objectives as go along. Anyway, that's it from me today. It's a long one, my second video of the day, but the first one, my microphone wasn't working, so I'm hoping to have a couple of interviews soon with Jamie Wallace. He said he was busy last week in Westminster, and he might be available this week. We'll see. Had technical difficulties with Jefferson Tilsley, both on my end and on his end. Hopefully we can sort them out soon. Speak to him. Tim Thomas is desperately trying to find some time to talk to me, which would be great. I'm really looking forward to that one. Tim's very hardworking county councillor and community councillor. Used to be my representative when I lived in Alexandra. So I look forward to that, and I hope to be speaking to Martin Williams in a few days. He's not very well at the moment. Best wishes go out to Martin. Hope he's getting better. We're going to talk about boundary changes for community councils, or the lack thereof. Anyway, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed. Please comment. Please discuss anything you want on the political side. Enjoy it. If you want to contact me through bridgendpoliticalowl@gmail.com or direct message me on Facebook. If there's something you want to talk about or is an issue you want highlighting, happy to do it. Anyway, have a good evening. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.